Welcome back, travelers. This week we are going to dive into Iceland, one of my most absolutely favorite places in the world. It was the very first trip that I ever took outside of the United States back in 2015, September 2015 as a matter of fact. And when I got there, I was beyond amazed with the beauty and raw power of the island. So I invite you to stay tuned, sit back, relax. I'm going to have some video in this episode of some iconic places in Iceland, and I will go into a little bit more detail with some of my travel plans that I created and made for this specific trip.
At 29 and I find myself wondering what did happen to the last 10.
Here we are again, A Traveler's Life, Episode 3. This week we're going to be covering my very first trip outside of the United States. In 2010, I finally got my very first passport. And it sat in my drawer or in my backpack for many, many years. And I came across this movie, and I know it's one of those things that, you know, where you say, "Oh, I saw this and it made me want to do that." Well, yeah, this particular movie made me want to go here. The movie was A Secret Life of Walter Mitty, the newer one, and I was spellbound sitting on the couch watching it for the first time. And when that movie ended, I said, I am going there. Fast forward to summer of 2015, and I'm at Bonnaroo with some friends of mine. If any of you don't know what Bonnaroo is a weekend 3-4 day music festival in Central Tennessee that they do every year. And I was having an okay time, but I was kind of miserable. The friends that I'd come with kind of didn't want to spend time with me, and you know, it's just I was trying to make it on my own. This is coming from an introvert and a person with anxiety that's in the middle of hundreds of people, camping with people that I know and seeing all kinds of concerts. And one of my favorite singers is Florence and the Machine, and she was playing there that year, and she come up on stage and she challenged everybody in the audience to do something outside of their comfort zone. And so what I did was I walked up to the nearest girl. I said, "Do you want to get on my shoulders?" She said yes. And we stood there together with her on my shoulders, dancing, singing the song. And when I let her back down, I said, "Thank you." And I turned around and I walked away. And I never got her name. I did get a picture of her sitting up there on top of my shoulders, but I never got her name. And that was the moment that I decided that I was going to use my passport and start traveling for the first time. And when I got back home, at the time I lived in Central Texas. I had a rental house on 70 acres and off in the woods. When I got back home with my friends, and you know, we decided that they were going to go somewhere else and I was going to I decided I was going to go to Iceland. So I started planning, and I planned all the flights. I planned a layover in Boston so that I could, I could walk around Boston and see the Paul Revere Trail. I planned out all my camera equipment. I rented camera equipment from a company out in California, and packed all my bag, bought all my gear from REI. This was my first Osprey backpack, as you heard in my last episode, with Osprey being the sponsor. And I did all of the planning, everything. I worked my butt off and I pulled extra shifts in EMS so that I could actually get extra money and extra time. And I pulled extra shifts on standby medic, and I pulled extra shifts at Circuit of the Americas, being a firefighter, just so that I could have the money available to be able to make this trip. And I bought all the stuff that I needed, and still wound up not having as much money as I needed, unfortunately. And even after all the planning and after all of the extra money that I needed, I had to borrow money from my 401k to be able to continue the trip. And I actually had to borrow money from a friend to be able to continue the trip. But you know what? I did it. I made the trip. My first solo trip outside of the United States. I flew out of JFK. I slept in the airport when I needed to sleep in the airport. And I went to Iceland. I had a friend, my friend Heather from Heather's Choice, which was my very first sponsor on the intro episode, if you've listened to that. She has some amazing backpacking food. She actually sent me a week's worth of sample food. And I'm talking some of the best backpacking food I have ever tasted. And she kept me fed throughout my entire 8 days, 9, 10 days, whatever it was in Iceland. And, I stepped off the plane 5 o'clock in the morning, just before sunset, because that's when it arrived. And I look out the window as the sun's coming up, and I'm just in awe. Even at the airport, it's just, the sky was gorgeous. And they boarded us on the bus to go into Reykjavik, where I had to catch another bus because I was going a little bit further onto the island. And I'm riding through lava fields. I'm riding through, all of this gorgeous raw beauty. And everything just hit me all at once. It's like, I'm here. I'm traveling. This is my first time outside of the United States, and I'm here. I am traveling. I am actually doing this. No matter what happens in my life from this point forward, I did this. I came here. I learned some of the language. I visited the stores. I visited these small towns. I camped in my tent. Now, I rode the bus. I tried to hitchhike, but the road that I was on, there were no cars, so I wasn't about to walk up 15 miles to the nearest beach and go there. So I rode the bus most of the time. But Iceland is one of the countries that is the safest in the world to hitchhike in. You can car camp. You can tent camp almost anywhere unless it's private land, or if it's a national park, state park area, things like that. You can rent a car at the airport. They're kind of expensive, but if you've got a group of 2 or 3 people and you're car camping and you still have tents as well, then it makes it a whole lot cheaper for you. Now, I wound up spending a lot of money being on the buses, and even with the food that I had, I still wound up spending money on food. But I spent time in Reykjavik, walking around the harbor and everything, and then I took the bus up to a small little town, and then from there I went a little bit further north after meeting a friend of mine that wanted to go for a hike. So we hiked up to the top of one of the nearest hills and saw the northern lights. We took pictures of the northern lights, and unfortunately my camera died after the first picture, so I forgot to charge my batteries. Yeah, this being coming from a photographer, forgetting to charge his batteries. But I took the bus up to the ferry near Selfoss, which is, I'm probably mispronouncing that name because everything in Iceland is really hard to pronounce, and took the ferry over to Vestmannaeyjaeber Island. And that's an ancient dormant volcano just off the coast of Iceland, and walked and did a full day trip there, came back on the ferry, caught the bus back down, stayed in Reykjavik, or actually I stayed in a small little town where I took some pictures. There was a local art when my gear got stolen in 2016, all the stuff, including my passport with my stamps for Iceland, are all gone, unfortunately. But made it through. I made it through my first trip outside of the United States to Iceland, and I can tell you that to this day, I've wanted to go back. It's one of those iconic places that you'll never ever forget, and there's never enough time or money to be able to travel and see all of it. It's such a tiny little island, but you've got the western fjords, you've got the entire island of Reykjavik, you've got access to Greenland from there, you've got access to Scotland from there via ferry, and it's one of those places in Europe that you can actually spend a whole lot of time in and see so many wonderful and beautiful things. And I can't recommend actually going there enough. To get to Iceland is cheap. You can go on Skyscanner and you can hit Explore and go down the Explore page and see because they should have Explore for Iceland. But you can also there's two main airlines. Both of those have flights out of JFK that are anywhere in the range from $160 to just under $200. Just depends upon what you want to do and how nice you want to fly. I spent $160 something and was able to check 2 items, but I still had to pay for one of them. You want to they do want to keep your gear light, so each bag can't weigh more than 23 kilos. So that's what I'd normally try and pack my bags at anyways, is around 23 kilos. So I had to pack all my food separately in a plastic container and then put it into my backpack afterwards. And then they allowed me to have a carry-on too, which was my camera gear. So Iceland, getting there is pretty cheap. Iceland, on the other hand, is kind of like Hawaii with its food cost. Everything is shipped in. Fruit, vegetables, it's all shipped into the island. So a banana, where you're spending 20 cents for a banana in the United States, you're usually spending about $1 for a banana in Iceland if you wanted to buy just a banana. It's a beautiful island, but it is kind of expensive. Now, to counterbalance that expense, you have all of the free camping. You have hot springs everywhere that you can free camp beside and wake up and jump into a hot springs. You can see the glaciers. You can do glacier hikes. You can do you can see the Troll Highway. You can see the Ring Road, and there's even hostels there. There's Workaway there. There's tons of things that you can do on the island that don't cost you a lot of money. And it was, for me to camp and to have a camping spot, was really cheap. It was like $12 to maybe $15 a night for me to actually pitch my tent in a place that was actually a hostel, and it also had washers, dryers. It had a full kitchen outside that you can cook your food in. It had everything for that $15 a night, and it was just amazing. And it was access to the town, libraries, everything. Again, I cannot recommend enough to travel to Iceland. And I will leave some links and details from my trip below. The ones that I can remember. Like I said, the majority of the stuff that I had from my trip is gone. But for everything that I can remember, I will leave details in the description below. And if you have any questions about Iceland, please feel free to reach out to me, and I will happily answer them. And if I cannot answer them, I can absolutely put you in touch with people who are on the island, who are tour guides, who are photographers, who are basically know everything about the island. And one of the resources that I had was a blog by these girls that actually live in Iceland, and I will see if they still actually have their blog, because this was a while ago. It's like 8 years ago. But if they still have their blog, I will put that in the information below as well. But I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. I apologize that it is short. I have run into some technical issues this week with no internet and a couple of other things, working my butt off, and having to drive a lot. So I haven't had very much time to actually put this episode together, and it's Saturday here, and I've got to not only put all the video together, I've got to put all the audio together for tomorrow to be able to launch it tomorrow. And I also have to drive another 9+ hours tomorrow as well. So I won't get finished tomorrow until late in the afternoon. And then I'll have to work on uploading the video by tomorrow night, hopefully. So if this video is a little bit later than what it's supposed to be, I apologize, but it comes with working a full-time job and not being able to pay the bills if I don't. Your support through Patreon would absolutely mean the world to me. Anybody that supports me through Patreon helps me to be able to have more time to do more quality episodes and be able to bring you more content. So I would really appreciate it if you take a look at the Patreon link below, and then like, comment, subscribe. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you want to know about. Let me know a specific location that you would like for me to talk about. As of right now, I think what I'm going to cover next Sunday for next week's podcast is I can cover Bali, Japan, or Thailand. I can either cover Italy, Brazil, Santa Catarina Island. I'll as something that I'll have to think about. I'm going to make it a surprise for you. It's going to be one of those destinations. And in the meantime, check out workaway.info. It is one of my resources that I use to be able to travel cheaply. Workaway is one of those organizations that you can join for $49 a year. It's run by all volunteers. Workawayers run Workaway. And you can put in your travel plans and find a place to stay that will usually pay you in a bed and most of the time 2 meals a day. So you get 2 free meals a day no matter how long you stay. You can stay anywhere from a week up to, some of them have up to 3 months worth of stay depending upon what projects they have. But in exchange for 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, anywhere from 20 to 25 hours a week of work that you do for them, they will give you the bed and they will give you the 2 meals a day, and they're usually pretty good meals. And that's how I went to Brazil. On my 3rd trip down to Brazil was through a Workaway. So check them out. I'll leave the link in the description below as well, workaway.info. And I highly recommend you getting on there, creating a resume, and start building out a profile, because the hosts actually look for people who are traveling to their country that are meeting their criteria, and they will actually reach out to you. It is one of the safest ways to travel. Okay? One of the safest and cheapest ways to travel is Workaway. And they have hosts in almost every country in the world. And you can also meet travel buddies, meaning other workawayers that are needing somebody to travel with on that platform. And you can also do language exchanges on that platform, where people will actually learn your language and help you learn theirs. So I'll leave that information down below for you. Please comment, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. These episodes come out once a week. I am doing my absolute best right now, trying to work a full-time job driving and releasing these episodes once a week. But I want to create you better content. I want to be able to get in front of the camera so that you can see me as I'm talking to you and show you these places that I've gone to, and not be able to use, like this week's episode has a lot of B-roll from Pexels. So I really want to be able to create you better content, and I've got to be able to get out into the world to be able to do that. Your support through Patreon helps me to do so. So I invite you to click the link for Patreon. Go over and take a look at the Patreon page. Right now it's only set at $5 a month. And I will see you guys, actually talk to you next week on next week's episode. Thank you again.
At 29 and I find myself wondering what did happen to the last 10. I ran away with my life